I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume, so I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. We are still in 1 Corinthians. We have been reading, the first few chapters were a comparison of the philosophies of men and the wisdom of God. But we've been reading now a couple of chapters about the various wickednesses that have entered into the church at Corinth. Fornications, defrauding people, suing each other at law instead of settling disputes among the saints. And ending with that great discourse about Christ paying the price so that we no longer belong to ourselves, we belong to Christ. So when we sin against Christ because he has paid the price. Beautiful stuff, but we now pick it up in chapter 7. Now concerning the things whereof ye wrote unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. The wife hath not power of her own body, but the husband. And likewise also the husband hath not power of his own body, but the wife. Defraud ye not one the other, except it be with consent for a time, that ye may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency. But I speak this by permission, and not of commandment. Let us pause there. This is a very detailed, it's the chapter in all Scripture that is used by Christians most often to try and prove that marriage is unnecessary and that marriage does not last into the eternities. But notice a couple of things, and we'll see it again as we read, but that last verse there, I speak this by permission and not of commandment. In other words, this is not a commandment from God. This is Paul giving his own personal opinions. This is how he thinks things should be going, not how the church, not how God has commanded it. He has been given permission to give his own personal opinions, and that's all it is. Now, at the beginning, we're asked the question, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. It's given as a statement, but it's really a question. Is it good for a man not to touch a woman? Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife. The Corinthian saints are asking, should we not get married? Should we get married? And I don't want to say too much about it on that point. We'll see a little bit more detail as we read, and I'll talk about it again. But note the advice here that you should have a wife and a husband. And if you are married, when it says defraud not, that's talking about don't deny your spouse sexual intimacy. That's what it's talking about. When you use sex as a weapon against your spouse, it is not good. The only reason that you should pause, that you should take a break from that intimacy is by common consent between the husband and wife, and then only temporarily. Because if it lasts too long, then it becomes a temptation. It is something that Satan can use to wedge his way into your marriage. So if you want to, you want to give up sex for Lent, for that 40 days, fine. Make sure you come back together. But let us continue verse 7. For I would that all men were even as I myself, but every man hath his proper gift of God, one after this manner, and another after that. I say therefore to the unmarried and widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I. But if they cannot contain, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn. And unto the married I command, yet not I, but the Lord, let not the wife depart from her husband, but, and if she depart, let her remain unmarried. Or be reconciled to her husband, and let not the husband put away his wife. But to the rest speak I, not the Lord. If any brother hath a wife that believeth not, and she be pleased to dwell with him, let him not put her away. And the woman which hath an husband that believeth not, and if he be pleased to dwell with her, let her not leave him. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Else were your children unclean, but now are they holy. But if the unbelieving depart, let him depart. A brother or a sister is not under bondage in such cases, but God hath called us to peace. For what knowest thou, O wife, whether thou shalt save thy husband? Or how knowest thou, O man, whether thou shalt save thy wife? But as God hath distributed to every man, as the Lord hath called every one, so let him walk. And so ordain I in all churches. This is Paul's great discourse on marriage, but notice how he is changing things up. So, in verse 10, unto the married I command, yet not I but the Lord. So now this is a commandment. Stay married. No divorce. You stay married. But, to the rest, Paul gives his personal opinion, as it says, speak I, not the Lord. So this is not from the Lord. This is Paul's own opinion. And on that point is, if you are converted, and you join the church, but your spouse does not, if they want to stay married, stay married. If they don't, if they want to leave, and they want to drag you out of the church, then you have the right to divorce them and remain in the church. Now, a lot of people will also use this where he says, I would that all men were even as I myself, and they say, oh, well, this is proof that Paul was never married. The problem with that is that in this portion, he is talking to the unmarried and widows. So those who were married, but whose spouse has died. That's the group he's talking to, both unmarried and widow. Paul, in my opinion, was a widow, or a widower. He was not unmarried. He was a Pharisee. He was a high-level Pharisee. He would not have been given that authority by the chief priests if he had never been married. Or it is unlikely he would be given that kind of authority. So let us continue verse 18. Is any man called being circumcised? Let him not become uncircumcised. Is any called in uncircumcision? Let him not be circumcised. Circumcision is nothing, and uncircumcision is nothing, but the keeping of the commandments of God. Let every man abide in the same calling wherein he was called. Art thou called being a servant? Care not for it. But if thou mayest be made free, use it rather. For he that is called in the Lord being a servant is the Lord's freeman. Likewise also he that is called being free is Christ's servant. Ye are bought with a price. Be not ye the servants of men. Brethren, let every man wherein he is called, therein abide with God. This is kind of following up, I probably should have read it all at once, but following up on his statement that if you're married and your unbelieving spouse wants to stay married, then stay married. And he's using circumcision as a kind of allegory. It doesn't matter. In God, you are called to serve in a certain capacity, and if your situation in life is that you are married to an unbeliever, God has still called you, you still fulfill your obligations. Doesn't matter. If you get divorced, well, so that's basically what he's saying here. And now we continue, verse 25. Now concerning virgins I have no commandment of the Lord, yet I give my judgment as one that hath obtained mercy of the Lord to be faithful. I suppose therefore that this is good for the present distress. I say that it is good for a man so to be. Art thou bound unto a wife? Seek not to be loosed. Art thou loosed from a wife? Seek not a wife. But, and if thou marry, thou hast not sinned, and if a virgin marry, she has not sinned. Nevertheless, such shall have trouble in the flesh, but I spare you. But this I say, brethren, the time is short. It remaineth that both they that have wives be as though they have none, and they that weep as though they wept not, and they that rejoice as though they rejoice not, and they that buy as though they possess not, and they that use this world as not abusing it, for the fashion of this world passeth away. But I would have you without carefulness. He that is unmarried careth for the things that belongeth to the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But he that is married careth for the things that are of the world, how he may please his wife. There is difference also between a wife and a virgin. The unmarried woman careth for the things of the Lord, that she may be holy both in body and in spirit. But she that is married careth for the things of the world, how she may please her husband. And this I speak for your own profit, not that I may cast a snare upon you, but for that which is comely, and that ye may attend upon the Lord without distraction. But if any man think that he behaveth himself uncomely toward his virgin, if she pass the flower of her age, and need so require, let him do what he will, he sinneth not, let them marry. Nevertheless, he that standeth steadfast in his heart, having no necessity, but hath power over his own will, and hath so decreed in his heart, that he will keep his virgin, doeth well. So then he that giveth her in marriage doeth well, but he that giveth her not in marriage doeth better. The wife is bound by the law as long as her husband liveth, But if her husband be dead, she is at liberty to be married to whom she will, only in the Lord. But she is happier if she so abide after my judgment. And I think also that I have the Spirit of God. A couple of things on this last portion here. And again, this is just his opinion. He has been given no commandment, so he is giving his opinion. But no, in verse 26 where it says, therefore that this is good for the present distress. In other words, something was going on among the Corinthians. We don't know what, but there was something happening. And because of this circumstance, because of this trial that they were called to endure at this time, because of this present distress, Paul gives this counsel. Don't seek to change anything. Stay single if you're single. Stay married if you're married. Just stay as you are. That is the best way to handle the current situation. Did his counsel change later? We have no idea. But that also explains why he would give this counsel when we know that marriage is necessary for the highest glory. He is saying, for this moment, during this trial, wait, pause, don't change anything, just endure it as you are. But he also says if you can't, if you are burning with lust inside you, if you are in love and you just can't keep your hands off of her, get married. It is better to get married. But because there was something going on that needed the attention of the ministry, it was better to stay single and focus on the ministry at this time than it was to get married. Now, what that trial would be, I have no idea, and I don't want to speculate. But that's what it's talking about. Now, the Joseph Smith translation for this chapter is actually fairly extensive, so I'm going to read that in a separate video, so I will see you there.